you guys know the news of the day and the news that happened last night. Politico leaking a first draft, rough draft from Judge Alito that basically previews perhaps the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, and it will no longer be a federally mandated deal where states have to provide abortion rights to its citizens. The power will return to the states, where Roe had turned the power over to the federal government. This is monumental, breathtaking news. I'm going to start here, though, for me as an American citizen, a proud American citizen, a patriotic American citizen. I'm not going to respond as a journalist. I'm going to respond as a citizen. I think the person that leaked this needs to be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law. We've spent the past year and a half talking about insurrection and January 6th rioters, and they tried to overthrow this government. Nothing that happened on January 6th compares to what this person has done to the Supreme Court and the rule of law and the Supreme Court's ability to do its job. Trust and secrecy are primary components to our Supreme Court acting properly, trying to move away from political partisanship and just interpret the Constitution and our laws. This type of leak jeopardizes, threatens all of that. It threatens the sovereignty of the Supreme Court. This, in my view, this leak is treasonous and is more damaging and harmful than anything that happened on January the 6th. But again, that's me, an American citizen. You guys know I came up a sports journalist. I'm not the greatest expert on any of this. I'm not denigrating my position, but it's one of the reasons why I reached out to Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch. These guys are experts on all of this, hence the name judicialwatch.org. And so, Tom, I want to welcome you to the program and thank you so much for taking the time. And listen, there's a lot to debate about whether Roe v. Wade should be overturned, whether federal government should be involved in abortion decisions. But I'm reaching out to you because I'm just offended by this leak. I think it's one of the most damaging things that's happened to our constitutional republic, democracy, in a long time. Obviously it's not as bad as the assassination of some presidents, but my God, this undermines our Supreme Court. Am I wrong for being really upset with the leaker and thinking that what this person has done jeopardizes the foundation and the principles that this country stands on?
Yeah, it's an attack on the court for sure, Jason. You're right to be concerned about it. Any citizen or anyone who supports our constitutional system of government that relies on the rule of law as an underlying basis should be considered. And the question is, how damaging will this be to the rule of law in the court? And on top of this, we have the left promoting the leaker, whoever this person is. You have this former Clinton official who's seeking to pack the courts, celebrating this leak. And as you point out, it politicizes the court. It's bad enough the court's politicized itself with rulings that are political. But the idea that the deliberations of the court would be interfered with in a criminal way, I think, in order to affect the outcome, boy, it's not so much, I'm not worried the damage to the court, obviously, and its reputation, but this is the rule of law. And if the court can't deliberate in a way that people can have confidence in and the justices can have confidence in, is it the end of the Supreme Court? If not, literally, practically in terms of confidence citizens will have in its operations from here on in. And we don't know who did it. The Chief Justice appointed the Marshal of the Court who oversees the Supreme Court police to investigate this. Is a justice involved? Are justice clerks involved? Was the system, the email system, hacked? Who was involved here? There's a lot of questions, and anyone with an interest in our Constitution should be investigating it, the executive branch and Congress as well.
I want to read Chief Justice John Roberts' statement on this, and I'm sure you've already read this, Tom, but I want to share with our audience. To the extent this betrayal of confidences of the court was intended to undermine the integrity of our operations, it will not succeed. The work of the court will not be affected in any way. We at the court are blessed to have a workforce, permanent employees, and law clerks alike, intensely loyal to the institution and dedicated to the rule of law. Court employees have an exemplary and important tradition of respecting the confidentiality of the judicial process and upholding the trust of the court. This was a singular and egregious breach of that trust that is an affront to the court and the community of public servants who work here. I have directed the marshal of the court to launch an investigation into the source of the leak. Let's start with his beginning is that this portrayal, it will not succeed. The work of the court will not be affected in any way. Do you believe that? Is that possible that it won't be affected in any way?
Look, the courts are human beings. The courts is made up of human beings, and now there's a breach of trust. The justices individually presumably don't know how it happened. I have no doubt the permanent employees, as the Chief Justice notes, are probably good. I mean, they're famous for being, as he points out, very loyal and protective of the institution. But you do have clerks coming through who are there for only a short period of time, relatively speaking. And of course, you have justices who have an intense interest in these issues who might be tempted to engage in this type of gamesmanship. I don't know what the answer is. It's never happened before, so all bets are off. But I've been asking online, who benefits, right? Who benefits from this the most? And it's my view the left benefits. And so to me, that's where we should be focused on figuring out what happened. For instance, the Supreme Court, the president's statements today didn't talk about protecting the Supreme Court from this attack. I mean, this leak is going to put those justices who want to overturn Roe versus Wade in the public eye in such a way that's going to lead to attempts at intimidation and potential violence. That is obviously disruptive to the operations of the court. The Chief Justice, as I reflect on it in this program, he needs to be more aggressive and saying this will not stand. We're going to proceed. And by the way, he should consider releasing this decision almost immediately. So the bad guys don't have time to gather to try to intimidate and distract and divert the court's processes further.
I love that suggestion, and this is again why we reached out to you, that they should release this immediately, because that is my concern. And how often in the deliberation process, because did they get the case in December, I believe? And so there's a deliberation process where maybe they take an early vote, but there's still time for people to change their vote before a final opinion is rendered. And that's why the rough draft, first draft, again, that was going to change inevitably, whether people's votes change or not. But how commonplace is it for a justice to change his vote on such a major decision like this?
Well, the Chief Justice famously did, at least reportedly, in the Obamacare decisions, where supposedly he did change his mind after telling his justices he was going to overrule Obamacare or support overturning it. He changed his mind reportedly, and so I think that's the hope here, that they're able to scare off justices who have shown sensitivities to public criticism, Justices Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. So there's a target here. And obviously another target is the Chief Justice himself. What's interesting about this decision, or the draft opinion, it seems to be designed to persuade Chief Justice Roberts to come over to our side, because when you look at a lot of the language, it's actually quoting a key dissent that Chief Justice Roberts had authored, objecting to the gay marriage decision. So all that language that the left is going crazy about is language that the Chief Justice wrote. So it's, from a court watcher, it's interesting to see this initial draft and maybe what its intent was. But the good news is, and I hope the rule of law prevails here, is that the court is going to overturn Roe versus Wade, and the states can finally get back to protecting unborn human beings from being killed through abortion. And that's why now in the end, that's why the left is angry, because they don't want that to happen. On the other hand, it will be a moral development second to none in recent memory.
You seem to indicate Kavanaugh and Barrett are the most vulnerable, and if so, if I heard you right, could you clarify and explain why?
I think the left thinks they're the most vulnerable. I mean, in prior decisions, they've seemingly had some weaker decisions that reflected reactions to leftist criticism of the court and the shadow docket. I'm sure you've seen that in the past. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to overstate the machinations of the court beyond, kind of what's in the public domain there. But this isn't being put out there to help the court get to the right result. It's to kind of put their thumb on the scales, whoever leaked it. And, does anyone credibly think this was leaked in order to ensure a pro-life result? I don't know. Maybe some do. But this is why we need to get to the bottom of it as quickly as possible. And Tom, and the damage is done because the decision is going to be released. And the left, I'm sure they're formulating the argument now, is going to say the decision's invalid because the final decision was different than this one, and the change shows that the court was corrupted or something like that. It is a mess, Jason, and I'm being calm here, but it's difficult to overstate that the question that I think is on the forefront of anyone who watches the court and our Constitution, the minds of those who are concerned about this, is can the court recover from this? Can the court recover from this? And if a justice did it, it could be the end of the court, practically speaking.
If we find out who leaked this, do you have any idea what type of criminal charges that person could face? Or I don't know, are they subject to have they done anything criminally wrong here?
Well, I think in the least, it's an obstruction of justice. When you think about the proceedings charges that were levied against the January 6th defendants, remember obstructing official proceedings, things like that. Though there's all sorts of crimes associated with this leak. And of course, when you interfere with the court processes, the court has an inherent authority to protect itself from that violation and obstruction and can pursue criminal contempt on its own. There are crimes here. The marshal's being asked to investigate. He runs a federal law enforcement agency. The Supreme Court police are like the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, or the Capitol Hill Police. They can enforce the law just as much as they can.
Final, I just want to add that you said, and I believed until this morning, that this had never happened before. The Washington Post is reporting that in 1973, hours before the announcement of Roe v. Wade, Time magazine preempted the announcement with a story saying that Roe was going to win. And so that's a small. The leak was given to them on the condition that it not be leaked before the final ruling was put out there. So it's not analogous to this situation where they're preempting them by a month. And there was some kind of issue with the timing of the 1973 decision. But I guess it just speaks to how divisive this issue is, that in both cases, there was a small leak and now an enormous nuclear leak. I guess.
Well, so it begins, Jason, the left media's efforts to minimize the leak, by pretending it happened before. As you point out, it's not comparable. A rumor mill leak coming out a few minutes before the final decision is issued. It's far from the same thing as an early draft being leaked months potentially before the final decisions to be released to the public. And so there's nothing like this that's happened before. And you can bet the left is going to encourage this type of conduct, as I've talked about earlier, and celebrate the leaker. And in the meantime, our justices are under fire and are under threat. Security obviously has been increased at the court, and now this decision is going to be made under the threat of intimidation and potential violence, thanks to whoever did this. They can't see justice soon enough, as far as I'm concerned.